Today's guest is Mark Twentyman. Mark is co-founder and director of a company called Office Tech Suite. They provide technology solutions to companies across the Southwest. In today's episode, Mark talks at length around the perception versus reality with coming from a privileged background, a well-known name, and the challenges that he's faced over the years associated with that. More importantly, he talks about coping mechanisms and positive changes that he's made to his life to ensure that he flourishes both personally and professionally. A great episode and definitely worth a listen. Mark, welcome and thank you for joining today.
Thank you, nice to be here.
Yeah, it's good to have you. As a way of introduction, can you give the listeners a bit of an insight as to who you are? And I'm talking personally, professionally and emotionally, please.
Yeah, sure. So personally, as the first I've ever done this, I'll introduce myself firstly as a dad.
Okay.
So, yeah, I'm a family man now. Got little Mimi, who's 2.5. And yeah, that's lovely to be able to say that, actually, really, to be honest, because that's something, like I say, I haven't been able to sort of introduce myself as before. Because when do you ever introduce yourself personally, I guess, is such it's an unusual thing for somebody to ask you to introduce yourself personally. So the first thing that came to mind was, well, I'm a dad now.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think professionally, I've just at the start of my second professional journey, if you like, in terms of I've opened my first business 4.5 years ago, IT business that you know all about. That's exciting. It's been very challenging, but we're getting slowly but surely. We're getting there. And then emotionally, how do I sit here today? Emotionally, slightly nervous.
Why are you nervous?
Slightly nervous. Never done this before. But my overriding emotion sat here today is I feel good, calm. I feel like there's a lot of positive things happening around me, for me. Got good people around me. So I sit here comfortable. I sit here in a good space. That's how emotionally I feel. I feel like in a good space. So hopefully that summarizes me to a degree.
It does, yes. So you're a businessman, a business owner, you're a father, you are in a good spot emotionally. Give me a bit more background though, in terms of actually, who is Mark Twentyman?
Yeah, no, it's such a good question, and one, as I said at the beginning, you don't often answer very, very often, do you? I guess I grew up in Bristol. If you want to go all the way back, I was born in Liverpool, but I grew up in Bristol. I come from, I would say, a privileged background. Okay. Is what I would say I come from. You don't hear that again very often being spoke about, do you? People saying they're from privilege. When I say privilege, I quite quickly and hastily add, not a wealthy background by any stretch of the imagination. I haven't come from a family where there's millions of pounds. Because when you talk about privilege, a lot of people will straight away go, "Oh, must come from a real wealthy background." It's fairly unique in that my background and the privilege that I've experienced has come from, firstly, what my grandfather did with his profession, and then secondly, my dad. If you're from Bristol and you are interested in any way, shape or form in sport, you probably would have heard of who my father is. And I guess because of that, I've found myself in some really privileged positions, situations growing up.
For the listeners, who is?
So Dad's Jeff Twentyman, and Granddad is Jeff Twentyman as well. Okay. So Dad's Jeffrey, Granddad is Jeff, but I'll refer to Dad as Dad, of course. But if you lived in Bristol in the last 30 years, and you like sport and you're interested in sport, I've probably no doubt you will have come across Dad in some way, shape or form. And that's where the privileges come from, because of that, I found myself in some really, really nice situations, positions, met some really cool people. And because, you know, this is not me saying this, this is what people have told me, because he's rightly so a very well respected man in the public eye, and the surname Twentyman is not Smith. You get, you know, that has kind of, wherever I've gone, whatever I've done, that has sort of always followed me. And then, as I mentioned, Grandad, taking it one step further, Grandad was associated and still is with Liverpool Football Club. And he was associated with a period of Liverpool's history which was seen as the most successful, part of something called the Boot Room Club, or the Boot Room Boys rather, not the Boot Room Club, the Boot Room Boys, which was made up of 5 or 6 men who, if legend has it, if you like, they kind of plotted and planned Liverpool Football Club's great history that we now talk about today, which was the 70s and the 80s, those great teams. And I'll tell you a story just to give some context to what I mean by privilege, because sometimes giving an example is always better. Mm-hmm. I went to Anfield, which is where Liverpool's home pitch is. I just learned to drive, so I would have been 17 or 18 years of age. And I went up with my mate Paul, and we turned up. And we were going to do the Liverpool tour of the ground. And you have to give your name and your ID. So I gave my name, and the woman instantly stopped and looked up and went, "You know that's a really famous name around here, don't you?" And I said, "Yeah, I do. If you're talking about Jeff as my granddad." And she said, "Are you?" And I said, "Yeah, it's my ID." I gave her my ID, and with that, she said, "Can you just wait here?" And then with that, we were taken from which was the public entrance into a back entrance, and the tour I was given that day was not the same tour that you get if you're a paying customer, if that makes any sense. And that was my first kind of real experience of, because as I say, I grew up in Bristol, so I didn't really get much exposure to it in Liverpool. So that was my first kind of understanding of, oh, actually, okay, maybe he is quite a big deal, as opposed to, so that's a little bit, about me. Grew up in Bristol, privileged background, give you a little bit there about where the privilege has come from. It hasn't come from wealth. And I grew up wanting to be a professional footballer. I wanted to follow in Dad's and Granddad's footsteps. That didn't materialise for me. That kind of fell by the wayside around the age of 18. And then I did a few jobs around that time of like 18 to 21, 22, and then I fell into sales. And I fell into technology sales, which is what I'm still in today. 37 years of age now, sat here. And that's where, and you know, people will often say technology, any interest when you were a kid? No, not really. Sales? No, not really. Was never going to be a doctor, not that clever. Thanks for laughing. But it's something that I fell into. Over the now time, how many years is that now? 17 years I've been in it. I was not very good at the beginning. I'm okay now, but it's something that I've just rolled my sleeves up and when I look back at there's so much now of my personality traits that make sense of when I was a kid, and those traits I think you need in sales, because that's essentially what I do. You know, call it what you want.
Yeah.
It still is.
Yeah, absolutely.
We fluff, and I see fluff around selling nowadays. Call it what you want, but it's still in old English money, it's still selling as I see it. So so that's kind of a bit of my history. I hope that gives you some sort of
that's really useful, and it's interesting because your intro was very short and sweet, and took for me to sort of say to you, give me a bit more of your background. And actually, you've just elaborated loads now in terms of your roots and sort of who you are. What was interesting in what you were saying there is, I guess, the privilege element to your life not being financial, but actually being reputational, and how your family were well known. So I'm intrigued. So talk to me about how that was, because I'm sure there's lots of people listening going, wow, that's incredible. You know, Jeff Twentyman, I know that guy, or know of that guy. How did that land for you? Was it a privilege?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely, it was. Again, but it's really weird because if you go outside of Bristol, Dad isn't known, but in Bristol, because he signed for Bristol Rovers, and that's why we moved. That's why I moved from Liverpool to Bristol. He signed for Bristol Rovers. Played for 10 years for Bristol Rovers, and then moved on into the media. And he hasn't just done sport in the media. He's done the drive show. He's done the breakfast show. He's done the whole shebang, if you like. He's just retired in the last couple of years. But it's really odd, because if you go outside of Bristol, but in Bristol, whenever we've gone anywhere, and again, I remember, you could take this back for as long as I can remember, Charmaine, you can take this back. We would get people coming up and talking to my dad. Like, you'd be in the Mall. Yeah. I remember it so well. You'd be in the Mall and people would want to talk to him about the football and anything. And I'm really proud of that. Really proud of that. Yeah. So, but also what he did and what Dad has done so well is he's also not just focused on the professional game. He's done a lot for amateur sport in Bristol. So it's, when you said it's short and sharp at the beginning, as unbelievably proud I am as my father, I feel like you're already, no one's ever asked me to explain who Mark Twentyman is personally, because I'm almost past that because of Dad. If that makes, when I'm going around, I'm meeting people, and people they've already, it's Jeff's son. That's always been the sort of the joke. But so to actually sit here and say
So your identity, so it does come down to identity, I think, doesn't it? So is it because there is a natural assumption that it's like, well, that is me. That's who I am. I am the son of.
Yeah. Which I'm extremely proud of. So there's not like I sit here today and I'm like, oh, this is terrible, because it's not. And I've no doubt that because I guess, like I said, I'm a father now, right? So what you're a mum, right? So I can talk to you openly about parenting. What I wake up for every day now is to strive to make my daughter's life better. Yeah. Okay? Doing things she can't even recognise right now. She recognises, I took her to school this morning, right? Or play school. She recognises that. She loves that. But she doesn't see the 9 to 5 that I'm doing, or it's not 9 to 5, the however many hours it is. When I take her to horse lessons, she sees that. So I'm extremely proud of that Dad has done what he's done, because it's no doubt opened doors for me. I've no doubt. But what the battle for me has been the shackles of being Jeff's son. Yeah. In such, and like I say, I keep coming back to it, which is an absolute, I'm so privileged sat here to be that, because so many people have said so many nice things over the years to me, and being strong enough to build my own identity. And when the football thing didn't happen at 18, at that point there was moments in your life where where you're at crossroads, and I could have lent on Dad's identity, but I decided not to and go my own route. And I think that was a smart move without even knowing at the time.
Yeah.
But like I said to you, there's moments in looking back into my life, sat here now, that absolutely makes sense. That my personality was being built at that point to what it is now. And that was one of those moments, because sat there with Dad and he said, well, look, I could speak to this person. I'm sure I could, get you a chance here. And I said, no, I'm all right, Dad. I'm going to go off and do my own thing and see where that takes me. And he was fine with that. He said, yeah, no problem.
What are the, it's an obvious question, right? So what are the consequences of, because I can hear there was, or has been, not now by the sounds of things, but has been an identity issue off the back of almost living in the shadows of success from, I guess almost that you were expected to live up to a certain degree, or certainly maybe that may not have come from them, but that would have definitely have come from yourself. So what have been the consequences?
Good. Yeah, it's a really good question. And the consequences are of coming, like I say, from a privileged background, because that's what I've said to you before. I really want to home in on that today, because the consequences of coming from a privileged background are the expectation that you will follow in the footsteps, whether you like it or not, of success. And I'm with me again. I'm very realistic. Sat here with you today. Lovely to be sat here having this opportunity to chat. But my dad is not. He's not a global superstar, right? He's known in Bristol, which happens to be where I still live, but he's very well known. So, with a surname as recognisable as it is, there's no doubt that there's an expectation from people, and because of that I have felt that, not from my dad.
Yeah,
never.
Yeah.
Like he's chilled, he's relaxed. I could do whatever I want. He wouldn't. But it's then you, as a lad growing up, you don't want to let down that family name. I had and then again, I'm here today to be completely open and honest. And I had a run-in with the police on a night out. I didn't get arrested, but I had a run-in and I got put in the back of a police car, and I don't know what it was. It was maybe a caution, but I had to give my name, and the policeman.
I'm assuming this isn't a recent event.
No. This was going back. I don't go out anymore, as you know. I'm in bed by 8:30. This is going back when in my early 20s. The policeman said, "Oh, nearly scored an own goal tonight," referring to Dad being an ex-professional footballer. So people know, they see it. So even that is, if that, I'm not saying it would ever get out, but if there's definitely an expectation you have to follow, and you have to live up to what has gone before, and that can be equally as challenging for anybody as it is if you start from the other side.
That must weigh heavy sometimes, though.
Yeah, it does. It still does. It'll never go away, because, like I say, I could sit here and talk to you about so many different. I mean, I remember when I play a lot of sport. Maybe I missed that out on my CV at the start there, but I do play a lot of sport, and football and golf have always been my two passions. And I was a young lad at a golf tournament, and my name was on the scoreboards, as they would always put up at these junior competitions. And I remember being there, looking, oh, there's my name, how cool's that? And then an adult, a man who was there saw my surname and went, oh, that must be Jeff's son. Well, if all up straight away, you can imagine that straight away in your head is like, well, your name has been recognised as picked out on that, so you're thinking straight away, well, I better not be rubbish today, because people like, even to a small little thing like that. So
yeah, it's crazy.
So those are the things those are the moments that but you don't realise at the time, and we all don't. But those are the things that shape us, right? They and like I say, there's moments I look back now at those incidents, at my upbringing, where absolutely I can see why my work ethic is what it is. My desire to want to do well is as high as ever. And I do believe I've come from privilege. There's no two ways about it. I'm not going to sit here and tell you I've had it tough, because I haven't. I've been invited to things and places that are not what you would call the norm. But because of that, and I've seen that, and I've seen what that side of life is, there's then that, can you do it? And I think there's two ways that can either go. That can either make you, or it can, and that's life, right, Charmaine? That's every. But what I was so keen to get across today is that don't think it's any easier for somebody who's come from what I would say is a privilege.
But I think that's the point here, isn't it?
As opposed to somebody who, because everybody likes to talk about the coming from the nowhere to this, but actually sometimes, because you hear, like, you know, what you hear and you see it in the newspapers, don't you? Like, famous people's sons and daughters, they love it when they fail. They love the headline about they've been arrested, they've done this, they've done that. God, that, and I can tell you, like, and mine's minute, absolutely minute, but it definitely adds a certain element of, I don't want to let anybody down here, and that pressure can, it makes or breaks.
And I think it can manifest in so many different ways, can't it? But I think the point you're making, which is a really important one, is actually everyone's story is truly unique. Like, everyone's chapters and story is truly unique. So despite whether you come from privilege or not come from privilege, at the core of everyone's life is going to be periods of challenge and adversity, and it's not for anyone else to judge. And I think there's that surface level expectation that just because you've come from that level of privilege, that you should have an exceptional life and be uber confident and excel tremendously at everything that you do. Yeah. And I think actually what was born from that was a lot of added pressure, anxiety, and questioning, who am I? But who should I be to please other people? Yeah. And you said at the very beginning, obviously you're now running your own company, which is amazing, and you're now creating your own success story, which is incredible. But where was that changing point for you? Because yes, you've just admitted that it's been challenging along the years to feel that you didn't want to let anyone else down. But when did you start investing a bit more in you and maybe giving yourself permission to be who you're supposed to be?
Yeah, I think from an early age I look back now and I've recognised that even from a very early age, and we're talking maybe at senior school here, that there was a bigger picture for me. Even like wearing a school tie, you'll laugh because I know your humour, but like everybody used to tuck their school tie in, but I'm like, no, I want to wear mine out. It's like, it was you. Yeah. Yeah. Because I wear a tie today. Nearly, But then at the same time, I put myself, this will crack you up as well, I put myself on school report because I was trying to fit in. Like, I felt if I was naughty, people would accept me. Because that's what I thought. I thought I had to, if I can just do this or do this, then I'll be accepted. And that's continued. And to answer your question, when did I stop worry? I guess the question is, when did I stop to worry about fitting in and actually go, okay, this is you, Mark. This you've got to be authentic. You've got to be unapologetic, and you've got to be that wasn't long ago, Charmaine. I
was going to say, have you? No. Have you stopped?
Because when I got released from football at 17, 18, I masked so much. I did care, but then I went and started to get drunk on Saturday nights and pretended I didn't care. It's like, so why would you do that? Well, you do that because you don't know how to react, do you? You don't know how, you feel you failed, So okay, you feel you failed. Okay, so then you've got two options. You either stand back up, roll your sleeves up, and fight, or you mask. And when you mask, you go and pretend. And I feel like there was still even in my late 20s, maybe. Whereas, you know, I remember like when I worked for a company for 10, 12 years, great company, great people. I'd met some really good people. But I joined as a 22-year-old. I left when I was 32, and I don't think I was. And this is again, this comes down to. This is nobody's fault. This is not because I was poorly managed, but because I joined as a young lad and quite a cheeky lad in his first sales role. We've all met that type of guy, right? And that's a good person to be when you're 20 to 26. Then when I tried to grow up and they wanted to keep me as that person. So I just delivered that person every day, even though that wasn't really me. So I just delivered it. It was a delivery. Yeah. It was an act. Not necessarily an act. I like to have fun. I like to, even today, when I've walked in here today, we were laughing with each other, right? Yeah. That's my personality trait. But then that's okay for there. But when you want to like grow and mature and get better at things, you can't mask. You can't. That's so it wasn't that. So when I decided to leave the company I was working for, which was around 28, 29, I didn't leave for another few years, but I knew then that I wanted to do that, and I knew that was going to be my opportunity to become
your authentic self.
Yeah, because I knew not that it was a bad company, not that I was poorly managed. I never blame anybody else for anything. I would never do that. That I needed to get a little bit like if you're a footballer and you break in from the youth team into the first team, you're always seen as the youth team player. And quite often those players have to leave that club to then be given that status as a... Does that make sense?
Yeah, of course it does. Yeah, you're carrying...
Given a sport analogy.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
So to answer your original question, I'm as authentic version of myself as I can possibly be, as I ever have been sat here today, which is why I said, emotionally, where are you? I'm calm. Yeah. I feel good. I feel fine. That's what you asked me at the beginning. I find that very hard to articulate, and I think that was because I've never really been asked those questions. As I say, when you've grown up with a famous father, that obviously goes before you. And then emotionally, there's been a lot of like masking of like, and so sat here now, I've made the decision to start my own business 4.5 years ago, like I say, to now be able to say, okay, you can create, you can become now, and trust me, I still like a laugh and a joke. Though you're never going to get that, but that had to happen, and it took me 3 years to do that, and I believe, like I keep coming back to, that was because it was like, the fear of failure, because you don't want to let anyone else down.
So 3 years is almost how you define it. The past 3 years has been that development journey for you in terms of Mark Twentyman, the guy that wears the long tie, the guy that shows up as you want to show up, as opposed to how you think you should show up.
Yeah.
So I guess a question is almost, the journey's ongoing, I appreciate that, but what had to change for you to, what are those self-investment elements that you've embarked upon that have helped you now get to a point of acceptance over your own identity?
I think there's in order to cut ties as being Jeff's son, I had to go and start a life of my own on a little island which wasn't Bristol.
Yeah.
And that little island was my business. Mm-hmm. And then I built my business on that island. And that if that makes sense, if you're trying to get into some, if you're trying to,
Let me reword that, because your own success story is your business, right? So that's a new chapter and an opportunity for you to wipe the slate clean and kind of rebuild as you, which is great. But I guess along the way, no doubt, there's had to be some changes in your behaviours, in your actions, in your self-investment.
Understood, yeah,
So whatever that may look like for you, I guess I'm just intrigued to know what that...
there's been therapy.
Okay.
So I met a guy organically, didn't go online, didn't do anything. And that's really helped. When I say therapy, I mean the word therapy, people will straight away go, oh, you know, they attach that to negativity.
There's no shame in therapy
in the UK, right? That's I myself would have done that, and I was really unsure. Really, when you say therapy, it's not like you sit there in a room and you're being assessed as to whether or not you can walk back out of that room and back into the normal world. That's kind of, I think, people's perception of therapy is like, you've got to be a bit of a, to need therapy, you've got to be a bit of a, but the therapy allowed me to sort of just say, okay, this is kind of who I am, this is what I'm thinking, this is where, and then you get a bit of validation around that. There was a little bit of validation. Even when I was masking things, I knew I was masking things. So one of my strengths as a person is probably understanding self-evaluation, like I'll know at the end of the day, every day or whatever it might be, I'll know if I've had a good day, bad day, if I've done something I shouldn't have done. And I'm quite
self-awareness,
honest. Yeah,
isn't
I'm quite
it?
honest with my self-awareness. That's an important piece.
Absolutely.
You're very good at that.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're always, because you do, and then it comes down to, from that self-awareness piece, if you've got self-awareness, and that can come, like I say, you did a bit of therapy, that really helped with that piece. Once you've got that self-awareness, and once you're honest, you can start to really prioritize what's important to you and what's not. And like I say, there could have been drinking, for example. My relationship with alcohol over the years has been a way of masking.
Yeah.
So, okay, Mark, if you want to become this person who you've, in your subconscious has been there for a long, long time, you can't now go and keep drinking the way you're drinking. You can't turn up on a Monday morning hungover, because you're just going to get the same results.
Yeah.
And I think the business has helped that, because there's responsibilities, right? Because like I say, when you're the young 20-odd salesman, cheeky chappy, it's almost part of the act is like you're the joker, the drinker. So once you've realised that, you can start to, and then you say, right, okay, so alcohol, then I was never interested in the gym, Charmaine, in my 20s, not even close. Like, you used to just laugh about. Now, I quite enjoy going to the gym, and then that really helps, because then all of a sudden, I'm not, studies show, it's not me saying this, that you get mental health benefits, physical benefits from going to the gym.
I'm with you.
So there's lots of, I'm trying to summarize it in a nutshell, but there's lots of changes. But I would say what I've learned over the years is you don't try and change too much too quickly. Small 1% changes over, build
Celebrate
up of
the
those
small wins, basically.
over a period of time really help. And I think like a lot of people in their, and I don't think I'd be alone, a lot of people in their 20s would tell you this. They go through stop-start relationships with alcohol and night clubbing, and but it's that, I think if you're honest and true to yourself, and you think there's something there, then that self-awareness piece is where it all starts. And I've been aware for a long time, but probably in the last 4 years is where I've started that journey. And that's and I don't think I'm anywhere close, by the way.
No, but then who is? I think you have to put the work in, don't you? You have to keep going and face forward. And I think, you and I know each other very well, so I've known you for years. But I think we've developed a professional and a personal friendship over the past, 18 months or so, it's fair to say. So I don't think you probably do give yourself enough credit when it comes to the self-reflection, the self-investment that you do actually quite regimentedly, I would probably say. Like, you're really good with it now in terms of, like, you've touched on a few things. So you have a much better relationship with alcohol now, and you probably choose to not drink over drinking because you want to be the best version of yourself. It's a choice, but it's something that you recognise. You show up as your best version. Obviously, you entered into therapy, which helps you have an outlet, which is so important. And I know you touched upon it a second ago, but I'm a huge advocate for therapy.
I am as well.
Yeah.
I would tell everybody to go.
100%. And, you know, my journey's been for the past 14 years, but you're right, it's a label thing. Remove the label, right, and you're talking. And that is it. You are talking about your feelings. You are talking about your past, your present, your future in a safe space that enables you to grow. So I think it's amazing that you've done that. But also, you know, you read books, podcasts, you listen to stuff, you want to learn and you want to grow, and I think that's really inspiring.
But on that, and I think again, because when I went to therapy, it was like what I understood about myself was I've got a real thing, and this comes back to again my upbringing of you'll laugh, Mr. Perfect, right?
Yeah.
And that absolutely makes sense, because when you look at my background, which was very privileged, and I only saw really, you know, I had a really good upbringing, and you know, and everything, you know, was great. And Dad was a professional footballer. We lived in a lovely house. He's on the radio. So my Mr. Perfect is like looking at my father, going, "You've got to follow. You've got to follow. You've got to follow. You've got to follow." So everything's got to be perfect. You cannot let this man down. Because pressure, not from him,
from yourself,
from myself. He never ever said you've got to do everything. So when you look at that, your Mr. Perfect is telling you everything has got to be perfect all the time. Once you go and you realise that you're not chasing like perfection as such, it's more a progress, and that's where that came from therapy. And that lightened the load hugely. So when you talk about, you know, and that's helped me now with work as well, and you know, to enjoy life more.
Absolutely.
I mean, you know, even up to the age of 25, 26, I was snapping golf clubs on the golf course. Like, I'm an adult and I'm snapping a golf club. That's not acceptable. But it was because the load felt so heavy. Because every single time I did something, I expected to hit every golf shot like Tiger Woods. I expected to play football like, I don't know, David Beckham, for example. You know, and, you know, going out on a night out, I'd go and buy a new blazer every single time I went out. That's just crazy. I'd be like, I should have had a direct debit. I used to go to Reese but it
must be tiring though.
It's
that in itself is tiring, right?
And I think it's not until you release the load, and that's what I would say is different from, I would be sat here in a very different position, almost not wanting to admit half the stuff I've admitted on camera today, because I'd be too scared. How would that look? How does that? And once you get over those barriers, once you get over those, you just, and you know who you are, or you're on that journey to, because we never completely get there. And I think, you know, because I've been lucky to meet good people, and I think this is important. You always try and take something from everybody you meet. That's really important, and I've learned that from my dad. And I think the sales background comes from, although this is the other way around today, is I've been used to him, watching him be able to talk to people in a way where, you know, it's quite natural for me to go into a room. If I know someone or don't know someone, I can generally pick up a conversation. I think that comes from Dad. That comes from my upbringing, my work rate, and that comes again from watching Dad. So there's lots of things that I've picked up. But what I've had to go and discover for myself, and anybody who cares to watch this video, and there might not be anybody, but there might be one person, is you've got to dig deep. If you think something or feel something in your body, you can mask it for so long, but it you know, you've got to dig deep and go and you know, I've got my best friend Joe, plays football for Plymouth Argyle, he's the captain. I was lucky enough to live with Joe, about 25, 26 years of age. And listen, he likes a good time. That's why we're mates, because we have great banter relationship. But when I lived with him for a year, professional footballer, that was something I was like, wow, this guy, his diet, his routine, you know, he knew when to have a good time, but 90% of the time, and you know that good, yeah, that's when you start to see it, and if you've got to take these things from these people, and that's what I believe is the beauty of life, is being able, but you've got to do it for yourself, if that makes sense.
Of course it does, yeah, 100%. And I think actually it's that acceptance, isn't it, that you are enough as you are, and that there is no such thing as perfection. It doesn't exist, and all you're doing is chasing someone else's dreams. And when you stop chasing someone else's dreams and you get comfortable with the person staring back in the mirror, that's the game changer, isn't it? That's when you can finally start getting comfortable with who you are. And the self-awareness, as you say, kicks in, and that's an ongoing journey. But I'm sure there's lots of people listening that have had similar backgrounds. And you said something a second ago, and you said, you know, coming on here today, I'm fearful of what others will think.
Yeah.
And that sits at the core of everything.
Yeah.
And it does prevent people from owning who they're supposed to be. So.
And I guess, yeah, absolutely. And I guess mine's just, because of the surname, mine's just that it's not just, oh, I've turned up to a golf tournament and I haven't played very well that day, or whatever, or I got released from football. It's, you know, the name that comes with it. You feel towing a caravan, I guess, isn't it? You feel that load, not because, like I repeat myself, because I've felt pressure from my family or anything like that. Not, absolutely not. I could sit here and just give you examples, you know, of where that surname has, but at the same time, it has been a driver for me to be able to, and I've had a really nice life sat here. You know, I have. You know, I've. But
I think that's not in dispute. I think the point being is people can make assumptions from the outside and say, well, he's had a lovely life, you know, and he has done these lovely things and he has been exposed. But that doesn't make you exempt from, you know, anxiety, worries, stresses, challenges. You know, that actually at the core of you is someone that doesn't feel that they're enough or living up to expectations. I think that's the piece there, isn't it? That actually, but even when you do feel that way, I guess what you're demonstrating today is there's still a way through that. You know, you can still create your own success story and own that and get fulfillment from it.
Yeah, and I absolutely. And I wish I'd have realised that when I got released from football, and I was playing, there's lads who've gone on to have really good football careers who were in my team that were naturally better footballers than I am. And I've just mentioned Joe to you then, who plays for Plymouth in the Championship. And Joe, by his own admission, has got the best, absolute best out of his football career because of his attitude, his application. The one thing that I wish I had have known at the age of 18 was, rather than masking and rather than pretending I didn't care, was go back to that moment and say, no, roll your sleeves up and work hard, because no matter what, and I've only just realised this in the last few years, no matter what your surname, no matter what your background, no matter what it is, people will always have an opinion.
Absolutely.
And if you're brave with your decisions, you will overcome whatever that opinion, because it matters not really. You'll overcome whatever that is. And if I'd have known that at 18, I might, not saying I would have been a professional footballer, but I regret that I didn't maybe go as far in football as I could have, because but then I've had a good career in selling. It's horses for
Everything
courses,
happens for a reason, right? And actually that is your path. And who knows what would have happened had you have done that. But I think within there, it's more around, actually, it's not about what they think, it's about how you feel about yourself. And maybe you'd be in the same position as you are now, but just maybe more fulfilled early on and less conscious about other people's opinion. But it's, reflective wise, hindsight's a wonderful thing, but it's good to have in your locker now. And actually, as a father as well, it's good to have, because no doubt little Mimi, as she grows up, is going to have that advice and coaching from you to ensure that she does believe in herself from a young age, you know. So that's really inspiring in itself.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, and as I say, I introduced myself firstly as a father, which is lovely. And listen, I'll do my best as a father, and I do my best every day for everything. There'll be holes. No one's perfect, right? No. So there'll be holes in my parenting, just like there will be in you can't
for
cover
sure.
It.
But we grow from those.
But the one message I would always instill into Mimi is, mate, don't mask, who that.
Shine unapologetically.
Yeah, whatever your background.
Yeah.
Just be.
Absolutely.
Be that person. That's what I would say.
I'm with you. Right, okay, Mark, you picked 2 cards before we come on air, so I'm going to read the first one now.
Cool.
First question is, when was the last time you felt vulnerable, and how did you deal with your emotions?
Walking in here today.
Is that the Charmaine effect?
Yeah, the Charmaine effect. No, I think when I do recognise now when I'm vulnerable.
Yeah.
And I don't mask over it. And I tell people. Honestly. That's how I would. That's how
Do you recall the last time that you felt, other than walking into this podcast today?
I feel vulnerable quite often. I mean, any specific. There's nothing specific that jumps out at me. Other than what I can say is when I do feel it,
You own it.
I own it.
Yeah.
So, and I think because of that, it's become a lot easier for me. So that's what it's almost quite a nice thing that I'm saying to you. I can't remember the last time, because probably every time I do feel it, I just.
What does owning it look like, though? Because I think that's useful to know.
Okay, vulnerability. So I've just been skiing.
Yep.
I haven't skied for 17 years.
Yep.
I put skis on, and I'm like, right, I'm at the top. I'm at a ski resort. Skiers go, and I'm facing this slope, and I know I haven't got a lesson till this. I've got to get, and I'm going to do it. And I guess there's a vulnerability. The old Mark probably would have gone, I'll be too afraid if someone's going to see me fall over.
Yeah.
Maybe it was a bit of stupidity because I probably wasn't as in control as I should have been. But I got through it, got that, and so how I dealt with it was I just faced the challenge head on. But I was happy to be at that moment. If I'd have fell over and skis had gone everywhere, people would have been looking over, I'd have been fine with that.
Yeah.
Whereas maybe going back a few years back, I would have been like, no.
You'd have walked away.
I'd have walked away.
Yeah.
Probably would have walked away and said, oh no, I'll have some lunch. I'll wait for my lesson. You guys carry on. So, but I'm not. I promised myself, you don't mask over those.
Yeah.
You face
face
the challenges.
Face it head on. I like that. Okay, fab. Second card you picked was, how do you recognise and boost your own self-worth, self-esteem, and has this changed over the years?
Yes, I think I've always come across confident.
Yep.
Which is not false, because I've always been okay, but I think now that confidence it comes as a much more genuinely, whereas before the confidence sometimes would have been a mask of
overconfident.
Yeah, to make up for maybe not being as confident. So yeah, that's what I would say on that one. I'm a much more genuinely comfortable, confident person than I've ever been. So yeah, if that answers the question, hopefully it does. That.
And I think you've kind of partly answered sort of boosting your own self-worth and self-confidence throughout as well, in terms of, holding the mirror up and investing in yourself and being more self-aware. And I guess it's the things that you do to sort of invest in yourself to make sure that you put your best foot forward.
If you're, like I said to you, if you're self-aware, I think if you've got, hold the mirror up, that's one of your great sayings that you've taught me. And if you hold the mirror up, whether you do that daily, weekly, however often you choose to do it, because we all do it.
Yeah.
We all self-reflect. It's
Absolutely.
not. Everybody will do
Absolutely.
it. It's just those who aren't prepared to accept
what they see.
What they see is the danger. And for years, I knew. I wouldn't say I was on a bad path. You know, I've never struggled with addiction. I don't want to make a sweeping comment here to say addiction's bad, but you know what I'm trying to get at. There's never been like an issue with anything
that
terrible.
wasn't your path. Yeah,
it wasn't negative. But the confidence sometimes was a mask of, okay, I'm gonna pretend I'm really confident. I'm gonna pretend I'm, whereas now, I'm completely, as I said to you at the beginning when I did that really poor intro of myself.
It was not poor.
I don't feel like I've got to go and do something a Saturday night does not mean get drunk, go to a nightclub, that's on my terms. I still do those things. I think everybody, still, that will always be part of my makeup. And I'm going away with friends in the summer, as we do every year. Mm-hmm. I'll have a good time. But there's a real defined, definitive kind of line between those moments to what they mean to me, as opposed to they are what I built my confidence on was being, out there with my mates or whatever it might be, trying to look like I've got it all under control. No one's got it under control.
Yeah, and,
really.
And it goes back to owning it, right?
Yeah.
That's okay. That's also okay.
Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you. Before we end then, and just reflecting on the conversation, if you were to have any final thoughts or words of wisdom, just kind of nuggets of, given your experiences and what you've encountered, and you're going to leave the listeners with anything, what would it be?
I've mentioned him a couple of times in the podcast, Joe, best friend. We have a little saying together. We don't use it all the time, but we say, let's just give it a go, and if it don't work, we'll deal with the fallout. And if you don't know, I'm not going to sit here and preach about business. I'm not going to sit here and preach about anything. If you could just have if it's what you want to do, as long as it's within the realms of the law, do it. Because whatever it is, you're going to gain something from the experience.
Yeah.
And I guarantee you, the fallout the other side is never as bad as what you think it's going to be, and you can deal with that. And that would be. Don't worry about what you're worrying about, because it doesn't matter what people think or what people they'll make their judgments anyway. So that's what I've learned in the last 4 or 5 years. Certainly starting the business is because it took me 3 years to do that, and now I look back and go, well, should have just done it, really.
But it comes back to what we've kind of said before, really. It's trust your own judgment, isn't it? It's like believe in yourself, trust your own judgment, and actually something good may just happen. But
we all, you mentioned it. I read books. I listen to podcasts. Yeah, and Stephen Bartlett, he's a good, what a guy, But he talks all the time, and I love that about him. About he's not always been successful, and he still has failures.
Yeah, absolutely.
And if those guys do it, we can do it. So
100%.
Yeah, just be. Yeah,
be yourself.
Be yourself and make mistakes, because if you're making mistakes, you're progressing 9 times out of 10.
Yes.
That's what I would say. So
I agree.
Yeah, that's what I would say.
Mark Twentyman, you've been a gentleman, and I've loved talking with you. So thank you so much
thanks,
for coming today. Thank you.
Perfect. Thanks for having me in. I appreciate it.